So what would it take to catch the attention of you, a fan of Star Wars, to bring you in to understand just what the most important, most critical, most powerful source of Star Wars lore we've ever had in the history of this franchise, and why it's here? I'm hoping you'll stick around for that, because this right here is what I believe is the epitome and the future of Star Wars, and it needs to be heard. I'm TheBlueShifting, and I focus on gameplay and content related specifically to worlds, characters, and stories that just exceed the boundaries of the mediums. I'm not so always caught up in just making things that are hype or even things that are very trendy. I focus on the stories that make my heart skip, the ones that make me laugh, make me cry, make me question my sanity, and most importantly, make me reevaluate my values. I've loved stories my entire life. They've been a big defining factor of not only what I've decided to do with my living, what I've decided to do with my free time, but also in general are the sources of inspiration for pretty much everything positive about my life. I know it might sound a little plainer there, but seriously, I think fiction has that magical ability to take things that seem mundane and twist them into something magical while still maintaining what makes it real for us. And I think that that's beautiful. It's something worth exploring. And this manifests a lot in a series of playthroughs I do, with the majority of which are done of stories that are highly rated, highly valued by communities, but I've never experienced. So you get to enjoy all the steps with me. But this is a little different. One of my favorite series of all time was created by one of my favorite developers, sadly was one of my favorite developers, BioWare. And one of the first major hits they ever made, before they got well known for Mass Effect and for their later titles, was Star Wars Knights of the Republic. Foundationally, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to the Star Wars franchise. In fact, to this day, I think it's still one of the most impactful sources of media and interest for the new rise of Disney's megalith of Star Wars. And in fact, many of the things that are in the stories of Knights of the Republic 1, 2, and the old Knights of the Republic MMO are being officially canonized by the newer shows. It's in hints and tiny references, but they're there. And that's why I think you need to sit yourself down and listen to this, because this is the culmination of possibly the greatest writing ever done for Star Wars. This is done in Knights of the Republic 2, The Sith Lords. Now, this is technically the 12th part of a series where I've gone through the game not only to explore and expand and examine it from a kind of critical point of view, but also to do a bit of a challenge playthrough where I kind of showcase my expertise with the games, having been a fan of it from its early release and the numerous times I played it way back 10 years ago when it came out. Now, a decade later, I'm playing it again, and I have discovered the treasure trove of what made this series so good. The fact it was so good, it kind of went over my head when I played it, despite having played it so many times. And this is special because this is also what's called the restoration patch of the game, where people data mined the original contents of the game and found tons and tons of not only written dialogue, but voice-acted dialogue of characters that was cut from the final release. Either because it just made it seem too bulky, perhaps it wasn't quite shot properly, perhaps they were just not happy with the deliveries in general, but altogether it was brought back by some of the very passionate members of the community and fans of the series, and it brings back and recontextualizes a lot of what made this game great. And we get to look at it in the best and most fresh coat of paint you can possibly have, at least until they renew it, which hopefully still happens, but we're going to see about that. Regardless, while Knights of the Republic 1 is a masterpiece of storytelling, and especially with the twist that it involves in the main plot, Knights of the Republic 2 is a masterclass of world building and really examining the fundamentals of this universe. Star Wars has suffered from a very black versus white polarization of its subject matter. It makes great stories, especially for younger people, where it's clearly good guys versus bad guys. But sometimes life is more complicated than that, and the writers at Obsidian, who were charged with making this very quickly put together sequel, took what they had from the first game and looked at some of the things in Star Wars lore with a critical eye and decided to really, really dig into it. And oh boy, do they do a great job. They dive into some of the lore topics that just don't really get touched. They even ask questions that most of us would never even think to ask, and they don't just bring it up. They make it divisive and impactful to the story and the meaning of the character and the choices that you've made throughout the entire game. It's an inspiration, not only to Star Wars, but to game development and writing in general, something that we really need to see back again. So if you found this video, and you have no clue what's going on, trust me, it's worth sticking out. If you've never played Knights of the Republic 2 or even Knights of the Republic 1, you should stop and you need to play these games. They're so good, even with their dated graphics and their dated UI systems, and like it could be painful for your face to watch and play these games. They're worth it because they've got so much richness to them. They've got so much to add and so much something to enjoy as a Star Wars fan that doesn't necessarily have to feel locked into the traditional movies and series that we're seeing kind of, being revitalized for the series, nor do you have to be a specific fan of the old stuff to appreciate what they're doing in these video games. And then the second one, it really is something so impactful and has some really interesting lore and really like nail-biting like moments of morality and questions of free will and these ideas that are just so highbrow and so just like platforming that I'm still kind of reeling from it. And that's why I wanted to share this. That's why the title is a little different from the rest of the series. That's why the appearance might be a little different from the rest of the series, and why ultimately, regardless of whether you watched this series or intend to watch this series, I think anyone who's a Star Wars fan who really likes the lore and wants to really look what happens when powerful, effective writers get their hands on this universe and can make something beautiful from it, and if you want to see the potential that has and will be for this series, please watch this. I don't care whether you like it or not, and if you don't stick around, I wouldn't blame you. My content's niche. It's meant for people who want certain things from certain games and want to talk about certain topics, but I do feel like this is something that any Star Wars fan should be around for. So while you might feel jarred, you might not play the game for a while, jump in with me while I get to break down and examine the high points about this series and what makes this possibly the most impactful Star Wars lore that has ever been created. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy. I'll see you in the game. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting, and welcome back to Knights of the Republic 2, the Sith Lords, and the Civilized Run, which we're essentially in the finale now. I don't think we have very many parts left. There's some dense parts coming up, so how I end up balancing it out, the length of the episodes, we're gonna see. But we're essentially at endgame now. So we're gonna head to Dantooine. It's gonna kick off like the final chain of events. All goes well. I think we're pretty much just 2 parts away from the finale, and that'll be really fun because honestly, like, even if it's not far, like this and Knights of the Republic 1 aren't my biggest series on the channel at all. They're definitely projects of passion. I love these games. I'm kind of sad that they shelved the reboot, but at the same time, I'm also kind of happy. But, if they manage to actually make it a thing, even though, like, they keep hinting that they might, we'll probably cover it on the channel at some point, but, yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath. I'm happy I did my own playthrough before all that got caught up in all the nonsense. But, yeah. There might be a couple things I do. I might want to go and make sure to get certain characters kitted out a little bit more just to make sure they're on, like, the top notch of what they need to do, what their level ups need to be and everything. So I might do that before I leave, but then we'll cut straight to Dantooine from there. So, yeah. Hope you're looking forward to that. I certainly am. Let's get this party started. Alright, here we are once again. Been a while. Yeah, look at that. And suddenly the building has been repaired. So bizarre though, like, who fixed it? I don't know. It kind of implies that, like, the Jedi fixed it when they came back, but, I mean, Isn't that weird? But the door's open. That's what matters most. If there's HK-50s in there, I'm going to explode. Because they've been everywhere else. Like, they were outside of here before, but, I mean, now they're just, like, if they're just in here, I'm just gonna be like, no.
Out of my way. I am Colonel Tobin of the Onderon Lord, I bring news of the Jedi, a place where you may feed. Telos, Master. There is an academy of Jedi on Telos, perhaps hundreds of them. Enough to sustain you, and enough for you to free Onderon. Enough for you to free Onderon.
Ooh, so that's definitely one of those cutscenes that was not in the original. Obviously, the voice lines that were cut or partial. It sounds like the audio quality wasn't the best, but that's okay. Like, they restored it because we could see that. Yeah, Tobin believes that by working with the Sith, they can bring about the freedom for his people that he wants. You know, it's that kind of clouding. It's interesting though that they point out there that like the close like guards to Darth Nihilus seem to be almost like undead. Like, I don't know, like they could just be like twisted by dark side, but they almost looked more like undead type troops, which is not an uncommon but a very bizarre twisting of the dark side that is kind of put into Star Wars. Whether it's canon or not, we'll have to see. But here we are. This place looks mighty familiar.
It is different. It has been some time.
Yep. Did not do so well with the Sith bombardment. Oh, Kreia.
Forgive me, but I need to rest. Go on. The council awaits. I will remain here.
You're afraid?
Yes. Afraid for you. As I always have been. I will be fine here. Whatever answers the council have are for you. Alone.
Is there anything wrong?
I am tired. The journey has been a long one, and I need to center myself.
It really seems like there's like a grief there. Like, she's overwhelmed, and it does seem like she's like almost like not embittered, just sad.
Know that much may happen here, but above all, do not forget this. You may trust in me. We cradle each other's lives, and what threatens one of us threatens us both. And if you find you cannot trust me, trust in your training, trust in yourself. Never doubt what you have done. All your decisions have brought you to this point.
That's really critical to remember that, like, we're tied.
Now, perhaps they shall see what you have become.
It's gonna be really interesting.
It is not as it was.
But perhaps that is for the best.
Hey, guys. Sadly, we're the only ones we can gather.
We were wondering when you would arrive. This moment has taken some time to reach us, and I imagine you have many questions.
Oh, yeah.
Or perhaps you've come for revenge.
Alright, let's see. We must ally if we are to stop the Sith.
No. We will do as we have done. We will wait. There's nothing else we can do.
Wait, what? But the Sith are attacking the Republic.
No, the true threat has yet to show itself. It is waiting for something, us perhaps, to enter the war. We have seen their soldiers, the remnants of their fleet, but those are symptoms of a disease. It is more bait to attempt to draw us out.
The actual battle is being fought through the Force, not with weapons of war. It isn't about the Republic anymore. The attack on Onderon. Something was attempting to use the planet itself, to feed on it, to draw on the power there. You prevented it, but it was a stalling measure. The next time will be critical.
Then we must act.
If Jedi gather, if we wage war against these shadows now, then Jedi will die, and we will die for nothing.
We were
Whatever
dying
this thing
anyway.
is, it must be fought by those strong in the Force. It cannot be fought in any other way. It knows this, and that is why it is killing us. If we die, then it will win, no matter what fleet or weapons are brought against it.
Right. I need to know what you spoke of when you cast me out of the Order many years ago.
You already know the answer. You've noticed it in those who travel with you.
My companions, what about them?
Have you noticed that when you act, others follow?
Those that travel with you.
There's something wrong here. A disturbance in the Force.
They follow you, without question, without hesitation.
Against their instincts, and sometimes against their sense.
It is because you are a leader. But that still fails to grasp the meaning of what I'm trying to tell you.
Are you saying I'm controlling them?
It is not an easy thing to explain. Surely you are familiar with force bonds. It is the bond that develops between apprentice and master when one truly understands another. It is developed over time through understanding of each other. Yet you do it so easily, and we do not know why.
You make connections through the Force, and it resonates with those who travel with you. The resonance is even greater when they, too, are Force-sensitive.
Your actions affect others more than you know. You draw others to you, especially those strong in the Force.
When you suffer, their spirit echoes it. And when they are in pain, their pain becomes yours.
So, if you think about this, the implication here is really fascinating. So, normally, the bond between master and apprentice, through the Force, which has been cultivated and even seen in, like, Star Wars core literature, core dynamics. Like, the bond between master and apprentice can be strong. It can allow them to, like, it almost can, sometimes can even communicate long distances. It lets them breach barriers that normally are restricted. But it's something that cultivates over time, something that is bonded by the Force, but ultimately is a source of, like, trust and, like, companionship. But for the exile, she almost violently makes these connections. Look, I think I'll touch on that a little bit too, but it's just like, she doesn't even try, she just makes these bonds, and it can happen quickly after a very short meeting, especially with the Force sensitive. And look, the manifestation of that. All the companions on my ship, all of them now use the Force. All of them now are paragons of virtue. They followed directly in the footsteps of the exile and have essentially become echoes of her, almost against their own natures, especially with Atton, with Mira. Like, look at their lives, look at the choices they made. Atton in particular has so many reasons to just avoid the Force entirely, to avoid confronting his past. And yet, he's embraced the Force within him. He's embraced what he's become. Mira's the same way. She resisted it up until the end when we kind of showed her the Force, and then she just bent to our will. It's very interesting because, like, it starts to make you wonder. It's like, is this just simple influence, which is what it initially feels like, or if this is some manifestation of our Force powers, are we subserving their will? Are we twisting their own personalities into something that we find pleasurable? Because that doesn't sound very cool, does it? Like, whether it's conscious or not, like, should somebody be able to twist people's personal, and it's almost like a cult leader, where they use the tactics to subvert like your own psychology, to cut you off from your friends and family, to twist you into something that they find more pleasing and adaptable to their worldview. We find that horrifying, yet the exile is doing that through the Force rather than through just force of will. Now, she also has a very strong force of will, which is why she's also terrifyingly good at doing this, regardless of whether they're bonded with her or not. How did this happen?
We do not know, but it is not the first time you felt the weight of so many lives.
And that is why the Mandalorian wars echo within you still.
So that's the thing. Remember, she makes these bonds aggressively. They are things that almost subconsciously, where people who follow her, who reflect her, who kind of fall under her banner, if you will, become bonded to her, and then she feels what they feel. So, all those deaths of Malachor.
We did not cut you off from the Force. You were merely deafened to it. Because of that last battle of the Mandalorian Wars.
The screams of countless thousands, Jedi and Mandalorians, crushed by the planet's gravity, annihilated.
Their lives still scream across the surface of that dead planet, and within you. To hear the Force over such pain, it is not possible. It was too much for any Jedi to endure, and it is a wonder that you did not die there when thousands perished. All those you had fought with and struggled with. You cut yourself off because you had to if you were to survive. You had hints of it in the war on Doxon. Malachor was simply the final blow.
You were deafened.
At last, you could hear.
You were broken.
You were whole.
You were blinded.
And at last, you saw.
When you returned to us, we saw what had happened. You carry all those deaths at Malachor within you. And it has left a hole, a hunger that cannot be filled.
In you, we saw a wound in the Force.
In you, we saw the end of the Force.
So, she connects with the people around her. And then she went to war to save people. But as she worked with them, and especially as she bonded with them through the war, she developed those connections. Micro connections, very similar to Krea's, but like on a small level, right? And so she's commanding thousands. Many of them look up to her. They have a connection with her, whether she's conscious of it or not, whether she knows their names or not. Look at bao-dur. He formed a connection, even though he only spoke to us once. And besides the one conversation and the time where we told him to activate the device that became the super weapon that killed Malachor 5, killed everything there. That's the only times we ever talked to him. We never knew his name. And yet look at the bond that he formed with us in just those 2 moments. And then thousands of people connected to us, not just as our allies, but as our enemies, the Mandalorians who respected the exile as a worthy opponent and felt that bond and drawnness to her as well. All of them suddenly die, all at the same time, all connected to her. And it would be like all of these tiny little parts of her that are like almost like she's like the center of a web, and then the whole web just gets ripped apart from you, and it tries to tear all the parts of her with it. And in defense of self-defense of panic, sheer panic and instinct, she cuts herself off from the Force. She essentially removes herself from the equation of the life essence of the universe before the universe ripped her to pieces along with all the deaths surrounding her. But it didn't stop the damage. She still was ripped to pieces, but she was able to cut her mind off from that damage. So now she's walking around as a whole, where all the lives and those connections once were have now been ripped away. And now there's almost like a negative pressure of the Force, where now the Force is being pulled into her endlessly, like a bottomless well, and it doesn't seem to come back out. But then something weird happens. When we come back into the galaxy, now we feel and wield the Force again, but it seems tied directly to Krea, whom we now have an insane bond with, that developed in our sleep. There's something fishy about that. But Krea found us very interesting, and as we saw those lines there, she said that while the Jedi see us as being wounded, blind, and a potential death of the Force, Krea sees us as an answer to a question that she's been looking for a long time. And that's what's really going on here, and that's why Kreia has been here this whole time. Because we are a solution to a problem that she's been trying to do for a long time. She's looked into Jedi teachings, she's looked into Sith teachings, and she never found answers until we walked out from exile and she realized what we were. But that makes no sense. I can feel the Force again.
Yes, you can feel the Force, but you cannot feel yourself. You are a cipher, forming bonds, leeching the life of others, siphoning their will and dominating them. It is the teaching of these new Sith to feed on others, on other Force sensitives. They are symptomatic of the wound in the Force. You are a breach that must be closed. You transmit your pain, your suffering through the Force. Within you we see something worse than merely the teachings of the Sith. What you carry may mean the death of the Force and the death of the Jedi.
So that's the problem. The Sith that we're fighting, the techniques they use, and what's insane is Darth Nihilus is like the epitome of this. Although Scion also follows this teaching, but they've taken it in different directions. But essentially, they've been able to be like, oh, you can forcibly pull power from other people, from followers and enemies alike. Enemies to the point where they die, followers to the point where they no longer have their own minds, and they're essentially slaves to you and your will. But they figured this out because they saw what the exile became. She rejected that power and rejected it vehemently with all of her subconscious strength. But they saw it, they learned from it, and they're replicating it on their own. Nihilus in particular has been building himself up to be a wound in the Force, but because he's doing it willfully, he is now a shade that sucks the life from entire planets by drawing connections to them and ripping them off. And he's a student of the exile, of what she is, and what she became because of her choices. But I can feel the Force strongly.
So you think. It is not the strength of a Jedi you feel.
He's right. It's all the death you've caused to get here. You feed on it, and you grow stronger. You're like Malachor. It's in you, it's what you are now. You must have noticed as you fought across all these planets, killing hundreds, only to become more and more powerful. Why do you think that was?
But what's worse is that bonding you have. It hasn't gone away. It's gotten stronger, and the more attachments you form, the more you draw others to you.
And that is why you are a threat to us all.
You know what the choice is. If you don't warn them, then the Republic will fall. All those countless lives, innocent lives.
Or the one.
What if other Jedi went to war as you did, suffered the same events, and emerged as you did? What if there was a crucible that trained such Jedi to consume and kill?
For you, Malachor was that crucible.
What's worse is these Sith that we face. I fear that they have learned the lesson of Malachor all too well. It is what allows them to prey on Force users, to become stronger when Force sensitives are near.
Somehow they have learned their hunger from you. And so you have brought about the end of the Jedi, and perhaps all the knowledge of the Force. But it is of no consequence. Your ability to make such connections, such bonds so easily are why you cannot remain.
Ah, Visas is here.
And so you wait, as a shadow.
Yes, we are alike that way, blinded one.
I would have thought you would walk with her amongst the Jedi. But that is not the way of the Sith, is it?
Do
Oh,
not speak to me of the ways of the Sith. You, of all of us, have no conception of what it means to be Sith.
You are a threat to living creatures and all who feel the Force.
You will lead the Sith here, and that we cannot allow.
Our judgment before remains. Exile. You must leave. And you must leave without your tie to the Force. It is a punishment reserved for only a few, and only when necessary. But we have the power to cut you off from the Force, and it must be done.
Forgive us, but it is necessary.
So, they see in us the death of all, and the thing is that's really terrifying to them is the fact that we didn't apparently intend it at all. But yet we've taught others how to do it. It's being used to hunt the Jedi to extinction. It's also potentially an existential threat. Essentially, we've become like, it's almost like we've become a pseudo-Cthulhu, like an eldritch horror, a walking shell, a ghost of a person, like something that looks and feels and talks like an individual, but is essentially the death of all potential life that I ever come across. I form bonds. These bonds are stronger. Before, when I mentioned that there's hints of this idea that like I could subvert people's will, that the exile could somehow twist people into being their like better servants. Now it's being like violent, that we take people and we turn them against their own natures and make them subservient to what we want them to be. We are essentially one of the most, like, we're like an epitome of what everything the Jedi Code tries to prevent happening, and have done it with the best of intentions. It's like a person who ended up becoming an emperor to a nation, but not because they wanted to rule, but because they decided that they could that the choices that they made were the only ones they could make in order to try and bring about the best life for everyone around them. And inadvertently, they were to destroy all democracy and freedom in the process. It's like, it's a pretty horrific telling, and part of why I love this game. The first game has a really cool twist. This is the twist of this game, but I think it went over people's heads. I think it was really highbrow, and it was very, not highbrow, but it was very high concept. And I think even when I was younger, I didn't quite get it, but now I do. This idea is like, you're dangerous because regardless of what you do, you're like a bull in a china shop. You don't need to be destroying everything you come in contact with and to feed off of it, but it's what you do. And they talk about this idea of like, oh, like, it's actually kind of a perfect explanation for the concept of experience points. They're like, look at all these planets you've gone to. Think of all the people you've killed. Like, you've been trying to be a good person, and yeah, maybe you didn't ask for it. Maybe you were trying to avoid combat, but look at all the death that we've been a part of just by going to planets. We've visited 5 planets, and each one we've killed at least 100 people each. And the game's like acknowledging it, where most games kind of like, it's just a function of the game, right? It's a function of gameplay. You fight and you kill enemies in order to survive. But in this game, they're like, you're terrifying. What are you doing? It's brilliant. So what would Joan do? So I think it's interesting because like being like saying like I see the problem, I submit. If it must be done, then I accept it. But the thing is, like, I don't know. Like, as a person, she might conceptualize right now, like, holy crap, like, I'm a monster. But, like, does that justify forcibly cutting her off from the Force again? Because the thing is, remember, they said that they can cut people from the Force, but they don't. They've never done that to us. We did it to ourselves. But now we've established the Force again somehow. They don't understand how. And we're doing everything we did before, but in a much, much more destructive way. So they're like, okay, now we have to stop you. Like, let's actually cut you off from the Force now. And I'm not sure she would accept that. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, is it dark side or light side? I don't know. I'm not sure if the game plays that way, but like, I'd be like, wait, like, there's gotta be another way. Like, this, if it didn't work before, what makes you think this will happen and work now? It makes the most sense. But I also think she'd be horrified at what she is, because like the evidence is very clearly there. What would Joan do? I'm actually torn here. It's either 3 or 2. You know what? I think she would resist and she wouldn't regret her choices, but again, I think she would also recognize like, okay, it makes sense. And as terrifying as this is, like, it might be for the best. And the big critical thing here is coming in clutch. Because I genuinely walked into this conversation assuming I'd pick 3. But having talked about it all and thought it through, even in her shoes, I think she would actually be like, okay, there really is something disturbingly wrong with what I am. And even if it means I lose some of my abilities, it might be for the best. So.
Do not be afraid. You shall feel no pain, but this must be done. As long as you feel the Force, you are a danger to those around you.
And here she comes.
Enough! Step away from her.
What?
Step away! She has brought truth, and you condemn it. The arrogance. You will not harm her. You will not harm her ever again.
I thought you had died in the Mandalorian Wars.
Die? No. Became stronger. Yes.
Is this your new master, Exile? If so, then you follow Revan's path. Her teachings will cause you to fall as surely as he did.
She is difficult to see. She's like a shadow of the Exile. We sought to lure the Sith out, and now they have come to us.
How could you ever hope to know the threat you face when you have never walked in the dark places of the galaxy, faced war and death on such a scale? If you had traveled far enough, rather than waiting for the echo to reach you, perhaps you would have seen it for what it was. Did you not hear its call on Dantooine Vrook, on its scarred surface, and in the minds of the settlers? I have endured your corruption of my other students. You shall not have this one. And you, Kavar, so close to the call of Daxan, tell me, did you not feel what poured from the moon, what had taken place there? And Zezkael, to hide upon Nar Shaddaa, yet blind yourself to all that happens there. So close to understanding the Force. So close to giving it up. There is a place in the galaxy where the dark side of the Force runs strong. It is something of the Sith, but it was fueled by war. It corrupts all that walks on its surface, drowns them in the power of the dark side. It corrupts all life, and it feeds on death. Revan knew the power of such places, and the power in making them. They can be used to break the will of others, of Jedi, promising them power and turning them to the dark side. Did you never wonder how Revan corrupted so many of the Jedi, so much of the Republic, so quickly? The Mandalorian Wars were a series of massacres that masked another war, a war of conversion, culminating in a final atrocity that no Jedi could walk away from, save one. And that is what I sought to understand. How one could turn away from such power, give up the Force, and still live. But I see what happened now. It is because you were afraid. As you would pass judgment on her, I have come to pass judgment on you all. Do you wish to feel the teachings born of the Mandalorian Wars, of all tragedies that scream across the galaxy? Let me show you, you who have forever seen the galaxy through the Force. See it through the eyes of the Exile. It is done. She is no more. Take me to Atris. She will have the strength to do what the Council cannot.
What are we going to do? If we don't stop her, then everyone, everywhere, they're going to lose their lives.
If I lose her, it will be my failing.
Interesting.
It is the failing of the Jedi who followed Revan. It is a failing of their teaching.
Soon your ship will come, my master. I will bring her before you, but I will not let you have her. Soon your ship shall come from that which made you.
I know you can hear me. I have always known. It is why I followed you. I have destroyed planets for you, General. But now, this once, if we could save something in this galaxy. I need to do this. Or I will die inside, like I died at Malachor 5.
So our allies called to us. I noticed that Atton didn't. That's interesting that Atton didn't. You've gained a light side force power, force enlightenment. What is that? I don't even know what that is. I have no idea. I'll see if I can figure that out later. But yeah, so here, Master Rook. I gotta, come on, text, come on. The Master's dead, drained of life, his body worse than lifeless, is an absence of the Force. So Kreia forcibly made them what we are, right? She didn't just pull the Force out of them. She didn't just cut them off from the Force. She made them wounds in the Force, and it ripped them to pieces. They're super dead. They're so super dead, and yet we lived. And Kreia was like, that was her secret. That was what she needed to know. She was like, how did I, the exile, not embrace the dark side and accept all the power that Malachor 5 could have made? I could have become like the strongest entity in the entire galaxy. And I didn't. Instead, I not only fled from it, I cut myself off from the Force to prevent myself from ever accessing it. And the reason I did was because I was terrified of what that power meant and where it came from. And so Kreia got her answer. She now understands at least our story. And we're still here. And yeah, events have moved. So now it's time for us to figure out what we're gonna do. Oh, hey, Atten. What happened here?
She's gone. The handmaidens came for her. They know who she is now.
Where are they taking her?
They'll take her to Telos, and Atris will do what she'll do with anyone she thinks is a Sith.
But if Kreia and I are linked, if she dies...
Yeah, I know.
Then we're going to Telos. We have no choice.
That's what I was afraid you'd say.
Is something wrong? You look troubled. I can feel it.
I fear I've been influencing you all without realizing it.
I do not understand what you mean.
I'm not sure how to say this. Like, do you understand why you attack who I attack? Kill who I kill?
I follow you. Feel as I do because it is my choice. I believe in what we are doing. What you are doing. I am here because I choose to be.
But how do you know?
I simply do. There is nothing I can show you as proof, except give you my word. Something happened within the Enclave. What is it?
I learned that I'm a wound in the Force. As long as I live, that wound will never heal.
Then they do not understand you. That is the danger of being a Jedi. When one separates themselves from others, chooses to lead a life of isolation, denying what makes them a feeling being, it is easy to make such judgments. And such judgments, I believe, are made in ignorance. There is no danger in what you represent, other than your humanity. You change others, but I do not believe it is due to the Force. I believe it is because you are a natural leader, and because you feel connected to the people around you. Where they look at you and see the death of the Force, I look at you and see hope for all life. And that perhaps a life lived without the Force is not the punishment it is believed to be. I will understand if you feel you must go alone, but I ask that you do not. Instead, take strength from your connections to others. Do not forsake them, as you did in exile. There are others who need to know you. Telos needs you. The planet and all its people are in danger if we do not stop the Sith now. Then the Republic will fall. Admiral Onasi, I have found the exile, and that which hunts the Jedi.
Interesting.
The Sith will attack Telos. They believe many Jedi lie hidden on its surface. We are going there now to aid them. Mikal out.
Here we go. Here we go. Interesting that they let us land. I've never thought about that. Why did they let us land?
Who is there?
Who I am is not the question.
I am Atris, Jedi Master, the last historian of the Jedi, the last of the Jedi.
Those are titles, words you cling to as the darkness falls around you. It is not the first time we have met, Atris. I was here before.
With the exile?
Yes, I was here both times when the exile was brought before you.
Who are you?
I was the one who asked her to be exiled.
I did as you asked.
Oh.
So long ago. You seem familiar to me.
Atris, I have always been here.
You are that which has attacked the Jedi. You are Sith.
Sith is a title, yes, but like you, the title is not who I am. It is not what I believe. For you, it is different. Know that there was once a Darth Traya, and that she cast aside that role, was exiled, and found a new purpose. But there must always be a Darth Traya, one that holds the knowledge of betrayal, who has been betrayed in their heart, and will betray in turn. You have bathed in the knowledge of the Sith, but there is not enough truth in such teachings. But it will be a step for you. You have gathered Sith holocrons, Sith teachings from across the galaxy. It is why you have chosen servants who cannot feel the Force, and most importantly, they cannot feel what you have become.
I have sought to preserve the Jedi Order, and I have gathered all that I know of the Sith to this place, so I might find them and stop them.
I had wondered if any of these holocrons had survived Dantooine. You have taken relics from one destroyed planet to the devastation of another.
It was always intended for the Jedi to retreat to Telos should Dantooine be attacked, taking all their lore with them. We could not allow the tragedy at Ossus to happen again.
Such an act marked Telos for destruction. It is why the Sith came here, though the fleet commanders did not know why. It is why Revan ordered its destruction to mark the beginning of the Jedi's civil war. It was a message that there would be no place for the Jedi to retreat, to hide. I would not be surprised if Revan left other gifts beneath the surface of the planet. Much can be buried beneath graveyards that will never be found.
When the Sith attacked, I felt Telos die. Turbo lasers fell like lightning upon the landscape, as they did on Dantooine, and so many died, so many voices, screaming in pain.
Yes, such acts leave their mark on the galaxy. Their cries travel far, though few can hear them.
How did it happen?
Search your heart. It was never battle that called to you, never battle that caused you to fall. Malachor 5 has touched many things, and it casts its echoes still.
Why did she betray me?
You betrayed yourself. Do not blame the exile. And unlike you and I, there is still a chance that one may be saved, the one that you cast out.
Where is the exile? I had thought...
Oh, she will come, but it will be too late to save either of us. It is such a quiet thing to fall, but far more terrible is to admit it.
Ugh. That's a lot of extra dialogue in the extended version here. Holy crap.
Your mistress awaits. She has much to share with you.
So yeah, things are they're a bit spicy. Pretty much what's happened is Atris, she said she was gathering and hoarding the knowledge of the Jedi. Turned out what she collected were the secret, locked records of Sith holocrons that have been collected by Jedi over the thousands of years that they've been fighting the Sith. She's been reviewing and bathing in that information, and whether intended or not, she has now started to believe a lot of it, started to utilize it. The reason that she set up this base the way she has, surrounded herself with the people she has, is because she has started to let herself be a bit more open-minded. And she doesn't want people to know that. She's been lying to herself because she can't bear the truth of what she's actually letting herself become. And then it also revealed, so Krea's real name, Darth Traya, has been in the shadows a long time. Even Zekail mentioned how she's hard to see, and that's her gift. She can be very quiet, and she kind of worms her way into your mind and influences you, makes herself a friend, a companion, and then twists you and betrays you, essentially. And so that's what she's done. She's done for a long time. They started to recognize her influence and started calling her an enemy, but they stopped being able to perceive her when she was literally probably in that council room when we were exiled. And at the very least, she was nearby, having influenced Atris to push for us to be exiled rather than any other punishment, because she wanted to make sure we lived so we could have it, so she could observe what we did. It's really, really interesting and shows Kreia to be she, honestly, if I'm 100% honest, she's a better Sith and a better, manipulator than I think Palpatine was. Palpatine manipulated politics. Kreia manipulates people, and she singles out the best people to manipulate and twists them. So now, we're going to go and see for ourselves the manifestation of that twisting. I'm going to save, because I don't want to have to go through all that again. But yeah, now we have to go and confront what Atris has become. Or at the very least, help Atris confront what she's become. Hello, Atris. Time for us to talk to one another.
She said you would come here to this place. If you think you can defeat me here, you are wrong. All this collected knowledge, all these teachings of combat and the Force, they're mine to command. And if I must use it to end you, I will. Surrender. You need not die.
I see. Atris, you've fallen to the dark side. Surely you see that. The other thing is, they kind of cut it out. We were supposed to, when you have the male exile, the handmaiden is, one of the handmaidens becomes your companion. And she, it makes a lot more sense in that, because what happens is she freaks out because Kreia tells you that she kills you, and so she runs off with Kreia in a rage to go and turn you into Atris. But then you end up having this really interesting confrontation while the exile, who isn't dead, comes to try and stop Atris. The handmaiden gets confronted by the other handmaidens, and then Atris comes out and just starts killing everybody. So that council room, there should have been the corpses of her handmaidens there. She's just literally just started executing everybody here. And she tries to execute your companion, and you can actually have a fight where your companion by herself has to try and fight Atris, and you can actually win that fight, but then it does a cutscene loss, and then you come in, but it gives you a benefit. But because we don't have that companion, it's just us. So just keep in mind, we should be very clear that the reason why it's really quiet is because Atris has literally killed everybody who's staying here with her. So surely you recognize you've fallen to the dark side.
Atris? That is not who I am, not any longer. She has not existed for some time, I think. There was always something else within me. It just took time for its voice to be heard.
What happened to you?
The old woman you traveled with finally made me listen to myself, to the galaxy. She said that you would come here, and that you would face me in battle.
What is this place?
All the knowledge of the Sith, gathered from across the galaxy, brought here by my servants, so that I might uncover their secrets, and use them to track them down. But now they have been drawn from the shadows of the Outer Rim, and the only final matter to attend to is finishing you.
And when the Sith are defeated, what then?
When the Sith are destroyed, then I shall rebuild the Jedi Order again. They shall have none of the weaknesses of before. They shall be strong, willing to take battle to any who oppose them and weaken the Republic. They shall not train those who are easily corrupted. No more students that will bring war and hate to the galaxy.
Atris, you will make the Jedi into the Sith.
The Sith are the Jedi are the Sith. What matters is that they be preserved, all the lore, all the teachings brought to a new generation. I am the last of the Jedi, and I will show them this truth. Bring it to the galaxy.
It's interesting because she's espousing some similar principles that I would actually agree with, the Great Jedi Order, the idea that, you can't just exclude one from the other, that you build and bake in weaknesses into the order by being on the exclusive Sith side, exclusive Jedi side. But she's essentially she's saying that she's bringing them together, but it's pretty clear that what she actually would be doing is just training up Sith that are and putting the guise of Jedi, which is far more scary than the Sith openly being Sith. She's about secretly being Sith but pretending to be Jedi. Not about actually marrying the two philosophies together. Weakness? Like when you fled KOTOR and Dantooine? No, I don't know. That doesn't seem right. Do you know where the Sith are striking from?
I do not know, yet, but it does not matter. They have come here to face the Republic in battle, and they will be destroyed.
You have placed everyone on the Citadel station in jeopardy, Atris.
Yes, the Sith are here at last. You have brought them to this place as I had foreseen. It has all been part of my plans for you. And when I defeat you and the forces you have brought to Telos, I shall take the battle to the heart of the Sith and wipe them out forever.
But for her, wiping out the Sith is not about destroying them, because she's preserving them with this Hall of Records. She wants to destroy the Sith who hurt her, who hurt the people she liked. That's all that she actually cares about. What plans are you talking about?
These Sith are cowards, striking from the shadows to kill Jedi. I needed a target to draw them out, but I could not risk my own life, all that remained of the Jedi. So I arranged for you to return to the Republic, leaked information of your past, and then waited for the Sith to come.
Oh.
And they did. But you came to Telos against my predictions. Now they are here, I can finally face this enemy and defeat them.
I will not fight you. Surrender, and I will spare you.
Surrender? To you? Never. Let us end this.
Alright, now, this is gonna suck, if I recall correctly. But I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Oh, no, never mind. My wisdom's too high, Atris! I will defeat you with cheese! I just pick you up and slam you against the wall. How anticlimactic.
Kill me. End this.
After everything you've done, I'm not letting you off that easy.
If you will not kill me, then what will you do?
So the Sith holocrons are screaming at us right now. You gotta remember, so the way holocrons are supposed to work, it depends on what stories you read. They're very conflicting, but essentially it's a combination of like force crystals, which can like hold repositories of force power and even reflect them, and technology. So you lock a crystal in the box, and then you can transmit force impressions to the crystals, which can then act as a like long-term storage that doesn't require electricity, just a force wielder to be around them. So they respond to force powers. So the fact that we're battling is likely tuned with the force crystals, which is why the Sith holocrons are now screaming at us in various languages. It's not communicating that very well in here, but that's exactly what's happening, is that the Sith holocrons are responding to the violence and the dark powers that are being wielded. Ideally, Atris is here supposed to be using dark side powers on us. I just never gave her the chance, but the idea is that they're responding to that. What happened to you?
This knowledge of the Sith and the Jedi is what I am. It is my attempt to hold on to the past, to try and protect the future.
And that's why you gathered these Sith relics.
I sought to preserve the knowledge of the Jedi, and to do that I needed to know the Sith, in order to stop them. Once I was a historian, the chronicler of the Jedi, and when both wars passed me by, I was determined that I would not forsake battle again. In some part of me, I knew I had made choices, compromises, but always for the sake of the Republic, of the galaxy. To do what you had done, at times, did not seem so wrong.
And yet at the same time, her motivation is so twisted and so slippery, and so like Atris is such a beautifully written idea of like how a fall from like the top of Jedi down to Sith actually happens, and like why, because like she uses us as exemplar, saying like, hey, you defied the order, you did what you wanted to do, but we're not evil, we had no desires to hurt people, we simply wanted to do what we could to protect people. She wants to preserve these ideals, but in pursuit of these ideals, and then watching like choices where people that she respected went against what was right, she then uses that as justification to pursue knowledge and interests that she always wanted to know, but kind of was taboo to go to. And now she's justified massacres, she's justified like genocides, she's justified slaughtering her own people, like people who are devoted servants of her, in the idea of pursuing the Sith and destroying them and rebuilding the Jedi Order in the image she approves of. She's the opposite of what the exile is, ironically. It never does until you realize you've lost your connection with everything else.
You're right. The Jedi were all that seemed left to me, and yet I had become so far removed from them that I betrayed them.
Tell me where Kreia is.
Where she walks is hidden from my eyes, but not from those of her kind. It is possible I may draw one last piece of knowledge from these holocrons.
They're supposed to be speaking in original Sith tongue.
You always knew where they were striking from. You always knew. These Sith are spawned of you. Spawned by the Mandalorian Wars. All those deaths. All those Jedi. Their power is to feed on life, until nothing is left except a hollow galaxy, echoing with the screams of the Jedi lost to us.
So, Malachor. They learned to become me by going to the place where I was born, essentially. It's so funny because like it makes so much sense, but there's been never any proof of it. But like when you think of the logic, it like, yeah, it plays out. It makes sense. Is that where Kreia's gone?
Yes. I had thought she was awaiting me at that place, but I see now that she lied. It was not meant for me, but for you. She has gone there. She is waiting for you to travel to Malachor 5, to finish what you started.
What I started?
Yes. You are an echo in the Force. A hollow space where it has been wounded. It takes a great act of destruction to create such emptiness. But it can be done. It creates places where the Force is difficult to hear, and difficult to find one's way. And you carry it with you, always.
What does this have to do with Kreia?
Now she seeks to create another echo, a wound in the Force, greater than the one before, greater than the one you caused. It will deafen all touched by the Force until no life is left. You were strong enough to withstand it once, but few have your strength in such matters, especially if they are unprepared.
So Kreia wants to create a new version of me, one that won't run from it, one who would embrace it and essentially become a blight on the whole galaxy, deafening all to its precepts, deafening all from hearing it until the galaxy dies. She wants to essentially erase the Force. Why would Kreia do that?
I do not know, but she needs you there. If you choose not to follow, she will murder herself at the heart of Malachor, and you will die along with her.
Holy crap. Why? I mean, actually, who is Kreia?
She is one of the Lords of the Sith, one of those who murdered the Jedi, and she holds the death of the galaxy in her hands.
How is that possible?
Because she has gone to Malachor. She is waiting for you there. But you will not survive, Telos. Nothing will. It is because the greatest of her apprentices comes to Telos, and he will destroy everything, just as he destroyed KOTOR and all the Jedi gathered there.
I've heard enough. This matter is finished.
And what will you do with me now? Abandon me here on this dead world, or end my life as I wish to end yours?
I need you to see what you'll become and turn away from it. Because if you can't, well, yeah.
I tied my life, my decisions to the Jedi. Perhaps only in separating myself from the Jedi can I become myself again, learn who I am. Perhaps exile is what I deserve, even though it is many years too late and you have already returned.
Leave the Sith holocrons.
Leave now, while you can. Save Telos. Save the galaxy. Save yourself.
They keep screaming into the void.
No, I could not bring myself to tell her. It would have changed nothing. And because I was afraid. You know what lies at the heart of Malachor 5. I had thought it was in the past, yet it has become the future. And all that has happened there will happen again. And that is why I cannot bear it. Because it is Malachor 5. And because she was lost there once. And I fear she will be lost again. I do not understand why the Sith permit such teachings to exist. They cause only echoes, wounds in the Force. A beacon? For who?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There we go. Some real stuff.
Well, what do we have here? I didn't believe it when Lino reported the Ebon Hawk at dock, but I guess it really has. Though given the trouble we've been having, maybe I shouldn't be surprised to see you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hello, boys.
Lieutenant Gren, Sith forces have breached the module and are attempting to pen us up in the compound.
Hey!
Zeron, I need you and your men to break through and lead the assault. With pleasure, Lieutenant. All right, follow me.
I got Zaren's here. That's cool. How did this happen?
It came out of nowhere. A fleet of warships dropped out of hyperspace, and before we could scramble fighters to intercept them, we were under attack. There were Sith fighters everywhere, and the few flights we sent out were barely launched when the bombardment began. We did our best, but we couldn't stop the landing craft that followed the initial wave. We couldn't hold back the Sith troops. We chose to retreat and began the evacuation instead. We were unprepared, and the docks were quickly overrun. We retreated back to the entertainment module to evacuate residents and workers. Thanks to your help with rooting out the smuggling ring, we were able to equip some of the soldiers with the confiscated weapons. It's a good thing you got us that fuel from Slayron, because if we didn't have it, we'd probably be falling apart. But there's still another problem. The Citadel's no battle station. It wasn't built to withstand this sort of attack. If we can't stop the attack, we'll be going down in flames. The Sith numbers seem limitless, but we haven't lost all hope. We've heard reports that we might be receiving some assistance.
Have you had any word of our reinforcements?
A squad of troops sent by Queen Talia are currently trying to keep the Sith from sabotaging the station's fuel system. If you need to get to the Ravager, then you're going to have to fight your way to the shuttle from here to the entertainment module, then make your way to the docking shuttle.
Does this mean you won't be putting us into force cages again?
I thought I saw you disembark with bao-dur. Is he here?
Now that you mention it, where is he?
I guess it's no time to be swapping war stories anyways. Good luck.
All right. So, we're going to go ahead and just stop here for now. But, Atten, why are you so hurt? Let's fix that real quick. Yeah, there we go. All done. All right. So, we gotta talk a bit, because there's a lot that happened at the finale, that last conversation with Atris. By the way, so much of the conversation you just heard was cut from the original game. So much of it. I don't know why. It's so good, but maybe it was just seen as too dense and too, like, again, it's like, there's a lot of high concept stuff that's going on here that I think they might have just thought was just a little too overbearing, and so they kind of cut it down to, like, essentials. But so here's the stuff that they mentioned that's really important for the lore that we're going to talk about real quick before we really, like, stop today's episode. So, Atris has her plans. We already talked about what she was willing to do. And remember the Sith holocrons she's talking to. Remember, like, part of the thing about Sith holocrons or any holocrons is that, like, echoes of, like, the person who puts information in the crystal tends to be left behind. In fact, a holocron often is depicted as a kind of pseudo, like, hologram of the individual who's connected to it. They aren't alive and they're not an AI, but they kind of respond to. They're more like a complex virtual intelligence where kind of like modern AI technology where you can ask questions and they can organically kind of respond to you, even though it's still just kind of like limited in its scope. So one of the Sith holocrons was actually communicating with her, and apparently it was a holocron that was built by somebody who understands a lot of the stuff of the more recent times. So likely it was a Sith holocron that was with someone with Revan and Malak, one of them. So she was talking to it at the very end there, and she got some interesting questions where she talked about like Kreia and like what was her purpose and why was she doing this, and like why would the Sith be willing to create these like really big death echoes in the Force, like essentially super massacres that just send out these ripples that everyone who's Force sensitive can feel. And he said at the very end, it's a beacon. And a beacon for what? Now that's what you need to play the online game to really understand. The Sith Empire still exists. Like, not like the Sith isn't like, oh, they're Dark Jedi. They've taken up the name of Sith, but the actual Sith, like the race of Sith that were incorporated Dark Jedi teachings into their culture, who waged war against the Republic, who were driven back away from Korriban. They resettled in the outer reaches, further than any hyperspace lanes will take you. But they built up a mighty empire, and they have a person at the head who isn't called the Emperor, the Emperor of the Sith. Now, the Emperor of the Sith, before we did our Malachor thing, he kind of figured something similar out, except he used ancient arcane Sith rituals. So what they can do is they were able to do stuff that was similar to like how the Jedi can cut people off from the Force. The Sith took that idea and they said, what if you extracted Force from people and then applied it to yourself? Very Sith thing to do. It's like, you don't just cut people off from the Force. What if you took that Force power and made it your own? So they came up with these archaic rituals that utilizing, I believe it was supposed to be 13 different people in a circle. And then you would pull the Force from, it was supposed to be a target. It started out as a target, like maybe like a specific individual, and you'd pull the Force from them and put it into yourself. You just had to have the 17 acolytes who were willing to go with you and to help you do that. He took that idea and he twisted it. He found, all right, if I do that, but if I change the ritual, and he unbeknowingly changes it to the point where everyone in the ritual gets their Force taken from them and pulled into them, he gets the power of 13 Sith, and they all just die. And so that's what he did. And then he said, well, what if I took that to an extreme and was able to simulate that across an entire planet? And he essentially devours an entire planet of Force-sensitive people and pours all that energy into himself. And he became almost like a pure vessel of dark Force power, becoming immortal, becoming really, really strong. And once he did that, he set his sights on trying to take over the Republic. But he was unsure of how strong they were. He feared the Jedi had become really strong because he could feel at that point echoes in the Force from the Jedi. And that meant that they were powerful, and so he was worried. And so when, after people who got information from star maps wandered into his territory, aka Revan and Malak, he twisted them, like forcibly converted them, very similar to the methods that they used that were in referenced here. Like you take Jedi into dark like eddies of the Force, like where like the dark side is concentrated, and you tempt them with power. Oftentimes the combination of the atmosphere and the oppressive nature of the dark side, their anger and natural tendencies to feel like dark side like influences, and the application of that power can twist people and make them more likely to fall and to accept it. That's a technique that Revan and Malak learned from the Emperor, and they utilized to convert many of the Jedi. But they were sent here almost like puppets to come and prepare the Republic. They wanted to weaken the Republic, to find enemies to utilize against them, and to make wells of dark Force powers, like Malachor 5, to not only act as places where the Jedi could be further like destroyed, but also to act as beacons to call forth the Sith and be like, all right, they're ready. So that's how the beacons work. And you learn about that if you play on the Knights of the Republic, like, MMO, which continues the story of this game. Like, I think it's 100 years later. It's really cool. I'll probably wrap up like how they're connected at the very end of all of this, but that's like the lore dump there. And because of all this lore dumps we've been talking, we're actually going to stop here. I thought we were going to finish the Telos fight today, but because of all the extra dialogue that was brought up and all the interesting insights that I've been able to gather as a fan of this series for so long, and like to the point where like a lot of the stuff I'm telling you today comes from the official supplementary expanded universe like novelization that was commissioned to tie this game to the MMO game. Like, they actually sat down with writers and made a book, and the book is really, really pretty good, and it covers all of this stuff and fills in all these gaps for us. And so I'm kind of shoehorning that information to you, but like, this is and the thing is, like, why does this matter? Because a lot of the events in these games have started to become canonized. Now, how canonized? I'm guessing that the reboot and remaster of Knights of the Republic 1 and hopefully 2 would officially canonize everything. So what what would be considered canon for the actual like Star Wars like cinematic and universe as it is. But until we get the actual remaster, I'm just going to assume a lot of this is going to be carried over into the main like core, because a lot of the stuff that has been here has already been directly referenced in like modern Star Wars content. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with at least 2 more episodes. This episode's likely going to be a lot more combat heavy, so like next week's episode is going to be probably us taking care of the Telos situation, and then a final episode for the confrontation on Malachor. Because again, mostly combat, I'm going to cut a lot of that out. But because there was so much dialogue and lore today, this episode's almost going to be untouched, which means it's a pretty long episode of just talking. So hopefully you didn't mind that. But we're going to end here. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the stuff that gets me excited, though. Look at how creative this is. Look at how wonderfully written this was. Obsidian did such a good job with the canvas that they were given from the first game, which was already really well done, but they left a lot of interesting questions. And Obsidian took those questions and really ran with them and made something really compelling. It talks about the nature of the Force, the characters involved, and also the nature of free will. They really tackled that and be like, look, if the Force can influence people so powerfully, what if it was doing stuff that you didn't intend? What if it was subverting people's intentions and manipulating them in ways that weren't necessarily wholesome, but you could still call her being light side? That's why I think the Exile has to be played as a light side character, because if you play the dark side character, you can't just start tromping around killing everything. But when you're a light side character, and yet you're still doing all these things that are technically pretty dark and rough and, you quote, evil, it really makes you question the morality of stuff like the Jedi and the Sith codes. And what about you as a character that you're playing that's trying to be a good person but doing all these things that are technically evil, like technically being the spawn of the Sith and the reason why Darth Nihilus exists? It's because of you. Whether you didn't intend it, but it's because of you. And so like this finale is going to be about us trying to confront what we were, what we became, and like see if we can fix it. So yeah, really cool stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the patrons and members. Anyone who's watching this series, I know it's definitely not as popular as many things I cover on the channel, but my gosh, I love it. I hope a lot more people watch this. I hope you understand just how much this means to me, and I'd really like to see what you all think of this series, and also what your thoughts are about a lot of the stuff I was able to talk about, the philosophy, like the moralities, and also like just how the Force works. It's so exciting. It makes me really hope that Star Wars can still be a good IP, that the creators at Disney right now don't run it into the ground and ruin things too badly. They've ruined a lot already, unfortunately, in my opinion. But there's a lot of hope still there, and I hope that they can kind of readjust, because it feels like the last 2 years, I don't know, they got used to success, and it feels like they've really been like taking like really crappy takes with writing. I don't know why it feels like so many writers just, I don't know, fumble with stuff that's like should be pretty easy to work with if you just know what you're doing. But again, as someone who's not a writer, at least not a professional one, it's a lot for me to say. I don't know if I can really be a judge of that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until next video watching me, if you see me next, I'll see you there.